Good afternoon. Let's make another video talk about Godzilla. I'll close the window so it's a little quieter. Switched cars now, so it's these brakes are not as bad. They're not bad at all. Anyway, so in the first video I spoke a little bit more about how my experiences with Godzilla and monster movies in general, and I should probably talk more about other monster movies. Like I said, I did not see the 2014 Godzilla. I have it on DVD, have not watched it yet. I did see Kong Skull Island. That was a fun movie. Now, King Kong, the original King Kong, is my favorite, all-time favorite movie. This is not the original King Kong. It's better, though, than the 1976 King Kong, but everything is better than the 1976 King Kong. I mean, it pains me when people say Plan 9 from Outer Space is the worst movie ever made. I love Plan 9 from Outer Space. I love Robot Monster. I love the Devil Bat. Devil Bat's probably not even one of those, like, worst movie ever made type of things. King Kong 1976 is absolutely painful. It's so pretentious. I actually like King Kong Lives better. That was one of the movies I taped from TV, King Kong Lives. There was one video store, I think it was, like I mentioned the Jericho Turnpike video store in Floral Park. There was this other video store where they sold movies, and that place, that was just, oh, I loved that place. Where was it? Was that up on Hillside Avenue, or was it somewhere else? That was my favorite place. I don't remember where that was. That place was awesome. I think it was somewhere up in Hillside Avenue, or maybe I should ask my mom where that is. So I remember over there I had bought the 76 King Kong, and I watched it one time and I was like, what is this? This is absolutely painful. And I know the guy from what's that show that I like on YouTube, Dark Corners Reviews? He absolutely hates the Peter Jackson 2005 King Kong. I don't mind that. It's not as bad. Oh, shoot. I forgot my wallet. Oh, I gotta turn around. This is why I don't like to change cars. Alright. Because I don't carry my wallet with me. So, gives me more time to make a video. So, but the reason I bring up Kong Skull Island is because there's definitely that segue. I mean, the after credits thing was about this movie, Godzilla King of the Monsters, which originally was supposed to be Godzilla King of Monsters, and then they put back the so which makes it the title of the original Godzilla, and that brings us really full circle. The American version of the original Godzilla. And the history of Godzilla, which there are many videos on YouTube about, and just out of my own arrogance and self-aggrandizement in order to get people to watch my videos as the new Godzilla movie came out, and I haven't seen it yet, is to talk about Godzilla, the history of Godzilla, which you can find probably hundreds and hundreds of videos on YouTube. There's no reason for you to watch my video on this, but why not? It's the type of video I would have made when I was 10 years old, if YouTube was around then. So, Godzilla was inspired really by King Kong. The original 1933 King Kong was a favorite movie in Japan. The Japanese people really loved that movie to the point where they actually made two Japanese movies that at least their title referenced King Kong. One, King Kong appears in Edo. Edo is the ancient name for Tokyo. I think another one was just simply King Kong. There are, I don't remember what the other one was called. These are lost films, although there are still pictures, photos from these films. Not much is known about them. Are they actually monster movies, or are they something else? I think I heard it was really about, like, they were actually like comedy movies about putting on a play based on King Kong, if I'm not mistaken. Excuse me. So King Kong, the original King Kong, was a big influence in that, as was a movie that came out much closer to the original Godzilla. It was a movie called The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Beast from 20,000 Fathoms was, I believe, Ray Harryhausen's first solo feature. He had made short subjects before that, and he made a feature, Mighty Joe Young, together with Willis O'Brien. So Mighty Joe Young, that would have been 1949. Harryhausen made The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms in 1953, so it's a whole year before the original Godzilla. And the special effects on The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms are absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Ray Harryhausen's work, I mean, it's already cliche to say that, how great Ray Harryhausen's work is. But I think The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms was absolutely superlative example of his stop motion. One of his best, because when you get to his later work, especially the Sinbad movies from the 70s, it didn't come across as well. The animation wasn't as good. The models weren't as good. It was almost like Ray Harryhausen was phoning it in. It wasn't bad, but it was, wasn't that great. As opposed to his movies from the 50s were phenomenal. My favorite is it's 20 Million Miles to Earth. That's just the best. The best. Even better, in my opinion, than, I know Harryhausen's favorite was Jason the Argonauts. I like the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad better than Jason the Argonauts. I know that technically Jason the Argonauts was the better film, technically speaking. But The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms is pretty much, the influence for Godzilla. And when Toho Studios wanted to first make the movie Godzilla, which in Japanese is Gojira, and that is the combination of the words for gorilla, obviously influenced by the King Kong, and whale, meaning I guess a whale-sized gorilla. And originally it wasn't really supposed to be a dinosaur. It was only later that they came to make it a dinosaur. And I know the director was Inshiro Honda, and the special effects was Ijai Tsuburaya. The man in the costume of the original Godzilla and many of the Godzilla movies was... I met him once. What's that guy's name? I'll think of it later. I'm drawing a blank here. I used to know it. What's that guy's name? Anybody know? Put in the comments below. And if I remember it, I can't remember it right now. I put myself on the spot. How do you do that? You know, someone else puts you on the spot is one thing, but you put yourself on the spot. That's unique. So, oh, this is gonna kill me. What's the name? I met him once. The guy who played Godzilla. He died. He died a couple years ago, and he would come to these conventions, and he only charged like $10 for an autograph. I should have gotten more. I only got one autograph from him. I have my picture taken with him. I'll probably put that as the picture for this. What is that guy's name? Oh, can't remember. It was a big honor to meet him. You know, the guy who played Godzilla. That was awesome. I met him. I can't remember the original Godzilla, and he played King Kong in King Kong Escapes. So he played King Kong and Godzilla and many other monsters. I'll remember it. Excuse me. I gotta take myself off the spot. Anyway, so Eiji Tsuburaya wanted to have stop motion animation just like Harryhausen, just like the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. It was too expensive. And so instead, they went for the man in a suit concept. That had been used before in other movies. You know, people think that was something that was originally, you know, something that the Japanese had invented. I can think of the only two live-action dinosaur movies I can think of from the 40s, unless you want to count the Flying Serpent or the Feathered Serpent as not really a dinosaur movie by any stretch of the imagination. George Zuko. Excuse me. I don't care, I'm just talking. But the two dinosaur movies I can think of from the 40s are live-action dinosaur movies. Obviously, there's Fantasia, an incredible one, you know, that we should really be studying. A short animated film. I mean, I mentioned Superman in the last one. The one that we should really talk about vis-a-vis Godzilla is the Arctic Giant. That's in the public domain. You can find that everywhere online. It's a short subject. I think it's 5 minutes long, if that long, with Superman fighting a dinosaur that looks very much like Godzilla. The design, and it's an interesting thing because the design of the Godzilla costume obviously was for practical purposes, you know, as opposed to, and the same thing goes really with the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. There's no dinosaur that looks like the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Actually, that body shape could be compared to some of the what they used to call mammal-like reptiles or therapsids, which were neither mammals or reptiles, and really not that closely related to dinosaurs at all, but more closely related to mammals according to evolutionists. But I think there are some of those guys, they weren't that big, but some of those animals in the fossil record that looked kind of like the Rhedosaurus, but nowhere near as big. I mean, none of the dinosaurs really that big like that, you know. I mean, even the really big dinosaurs, which were really big, were nothing like these monster movies, you know. I mean, Godzilla is described in the original American version as being like 400 feet tall. I mean, that's ridiculous, you know. I don't think that's actually how tall he was described as in the Japanese version. I think something closer to like 100 feet tall, 150 feet tall. Still, that is huge. No dinosaur was that tall, and very few dinosaurs were that long, big. Certainly none of the theropod dinosaurs that we know of were more than 50 or maybe 60 feet long or tall or whatever. You know, the biggest was probably the Spinosaurus, which is probably the closest to one of these movie monster type things, but then that was more of like an aquatic dinosaur in a sense, like a crocodile. It had this big fin on its back, or possibly spikes, but most likely a fin. But these spines on its back, that's why it's called Spinosaurus, but its face was distinctly crocodile type face for eating fish, you know. But of course, these are movie monsters. These are not the real deal. But the original Godzilla, so it was influenced again, so by King Kong, by the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. But the idea of using a man in a suit, you can find two movies from the 40s that really spoke to that. One was a very famous movie, a very popular movie, and successful movie, 1 Million BC, not to be confused with its remake, 1 Million Years BC. So 1 Million Years BC in the 60s with Raquel Welch was animated by Ray Harryhausen, except that iguana in the beginning, and maybe some other, I think there was one other actual animal in it, but the original 1 Million BC with Victor Mature and Carol Landis, right? Lon Chaney Jr. was in that as well. That was made by Hal Roach, and I think Cecil B. DeMille was, not D.W. Griffith, not Cecil B. DeMille. I think D.W. Griffith was also involved in it to some extent. D.W. Griffith was actually the pioneer of live-action dinosaur movies and caveman movies. He had a caveman movie, Man's Genesis, and then the caveman dinosaur movie called Brute Force, and that had like a big puppet Ceratosaurus, something like that, and some things like lizards and crocodiles and snakes with fins and feathers and stuff glued onto them. So, you know, that was already in the silent era, like 1912, I think. I mean, before that, you had Gertie the Dinosaur in 1909. That was an animated film. It had some live-action parts to it, but, you know, the history of the dinosaurs in films, that we could talk about a whole series of videos just on that. The reason I'm bringing up 1 Million BC is, although most of the dinosaurs and other prehistoric animals depicted in 1 Million BC were actually animals dressed up to look like dinosaurs. So the famous one is the crocodile, I guess it was an alligator, with a fin on its back that fought, I think it was a tegu lizard. And that scene became, you know, just stock footage that was used in dozens of movies. You can look at my lecture that's on YouTube for Monster Bash on that subject of using stock footage for dinosaur movies, not just from 1 Million BC, but they used from Dinosaurus, they used from the Animal World, which was Ray Harryhausen color movie that Ray Harryhausen and Willis O'Brien worked on together, and later the Planet of Dinosaurs from the 70s. Bunch of stock footage from there. Not bad animation, I might add, and an homage to Ray Harryhausen. They actually included a Brachiosaurus type of creature in there, in addition to real, depictions of what they understood what real dinosaurs would have looked like, although science has changed since then about those questions. But for some of the scenes, they had a man in a Allosaurus costume or T-Rex costume depicting the dinosaur in 1 million BC, but he wasn't. There was no forced perspective. He was seen to be the same size as the people. So that's a little bit strange, that he was just a little dinosaur. Looked almost like Barney, actually, long before Barney, of course. There's another dinosaur movie from the 40s, not as well known, depicting giant dinosaurs, but not really interacting in any way with the people. Just kind of being there out in the distance type of thing, and at one point fighting with, I think it was supposed to be a giant ground sloth, looked more like a orangutan, really, giant orangutan. Neither of which would have lived at the same time as dinosaurs, but it doesn't matter because it's supposed to be taking place there in 1948. It's a movie called Unknown Island. I think it might have been released under other titles as well. From 1948, in color, actually. The color's not that good, and the story's not that good, the acting's not that good, the special effects are not that good, but still, for the dinosaur completists, that was one of the movies I wanted to see, and I did not dislike it. It was a nice movie from the 40s that just happened to have dinosaurs in it. Not as disappointing as, let's say, Two Lost Worlds, which Dark Corner's reviews complained, not that they used stock footage from 1 million BC, but they didn't use enough of it, which is true. That's an incorrigible film, because it's really just a pretty basic pirate movie with not a very good plot, and then they tacked on stock footage from 1 million BC to the end just so they could put it on the poster, and call it Two Lost Worlds. That's a very curious film. It came out before Godzilla also, so there was interest in dinosaurs. There was one other dinosaur movie actually in the 40s, because most people would say Two Lost Worlds would be the first movie to use the stock footage from 1 million BC, but there was actually Tarzan's Desert Mystery used stock footage from 1 million BC, and also had a giant spider, I believe, that Tarzan fought with in the cave. And also, it's a fun movie. I saw it once. I wouldn't mind watching that again. And so So I was wrong. There are actually 3 dinosaur movies from the 40s. 1 million BC, Tarzan's Desert Mystery, which came out just 3 years after 1 million BC, and 1948, post-war movie Unknown Island. And they had people in costumes playing the dinosaurs. They looked really bad. Godzilla in 1954 didn't look that bad. The original Japanese version, which I've seen, it's been a while, I should watch it again, is a brilliant film. It's a very, very good movie. It's a little too dark for a little kid, and even for a grown-up like me who likes kind of kiddie-like movies, but you have to understand, they lived through that. They had the atom bombs, not too much earlier, 9 years earlier. Also, there was a ship where the men got sick from the fallout of nuclear tests, Japanese ship. That influenced this as well. So that was the original Godzilla. It was released in America, I believe, in 1956. As the original is Godzilla. Still can't remember the name of the guy. It's a Japanese name. You can't blame me. Can you Can you name Jewish names? Do you know what the Imre Amis's name was? You know, the Lev Simcha's name was? You know, the Tzemach Tzedek's name? The Mishnah Berurah's name? If you're not an Orthodox Jew. So you can't blame me for not, even though I met this guy once and he was very nice, the guy who played Godzilla, and he played Godzilla in a lot of movies. What was his name? Nakajima. Haru Nakajima, that's it. I remembered it. So whoever wrote Haru Nakajima in the comments and didn't look it up on Google, but they knew it was Haru Nakajima. You don't really get anything. But so I met Haru Nakajima once and I got his autograph. So, and he played Godzilla in the original Godzilla. And in all the Godzilla movies, I think until Destroy All Monsters, if not maybe even later. Not sure. Maybe, I think already by Godzilla vs. Gigan they had somebody else, I don't know, but the history of the Godzilla franchise, we've already been talking for 26 minutes. We'll talk a little bit more. The next movie in the Godzilla franchise was a movie called, I don't know what it's called in Japanese, but in English there are two titles for it. One was Godzilla Raids Again, but it was also released in America as Gigantus the Fire Monster. I had my own fan theories about Godzilla and Gigantus. The real truth of the matter was it was Godzilla, and there was more than one Godzilla, because the first Godzilla got killed. We saw the bones in the original movie. He was dead. The second Godzilla, there was another Godzilla, and he was fighting Anguirus, or however you want to pronounce it. And in America, they didn't realize that this is going to be a series of over 30, 40 movies, whatever. They figured this was one and done, so let's let audiences believe this was a new movie, so we'll call it Gigantus the Fire Monster, to release it as a different movie. And in the movie, I believe they find him on an island fighting Anguirus, and Godzilla and Anguirus, or Gigantus and Anguirus, however you want to say it, Anguirus, they come to Osaka, I believe, and in the end of the movie, they bury the Godzilla. Well, Godzilla kills Anguirus. Anguirus gets killed a whole bunch of times in Godzilla movies, and so Godzilla kills Anguirus, and then they bury Godzilla in a mountain of ice. They just pretty much throw ice cubes on him and bury him in an iceberg. Iceberg, Goldberg, what's the difference, right? You know that joke. So that's a straight continuity to King Kong versus Godzilla. Now, I used to say, well, there's Son of Godzilla. Where's the mommy? So my fan theory, it was many years later, but my fan theory was, that the Godzilla we know after the first movie was actually Gigantus. That was a female Godzilla, and who mothered this egg, baby Minion. That was my theory, and I would insist that the Godzilla in King Kong vs. Godzilla was actually Gigantus. Of course, it was Godzilla. It was another Godzilla. I think they actually called it Godzillasaurus, an Ankylosaurus or something in the American version of Godzilla Raids Again. In that Godzilla Raids Again, aka Gigantus the Fire Monster, they actually also used stock footage from from 1 million BC. What else? So then the next movie was King Kong vs. Godzilla, where Godzilla pops out of an iceberg. So it's a direct continuity between Godzilla Raids Again and King Kong vs. Godzilla. Then Godzilla is in, the next Godzilla movie is, what's it called? Is Godzilla vs. Mothra, sometimes called Mothra vs. Godzilla. Released in America is Godzilla vs. The Thing. And there Godzilla pops out of the sand, out of the dirt, out of the ground, which is interesting because the last one was he just disappeared into the ocean after fighting King Kong. King Kong gets up out of the ocean and Godzilla's just there down in the ground. So does that mean that Godzilla that he had that was this a new Godzilla? Was it one that I guess he burrowed under the ground and after and because he pops up kind of near a beach, and then the next Godzilla movie is the one that's most similar really to the new one that came out today that I haven't seen yet, is Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. Because, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster had Ghidorah, Godzilla, Rodan, and Mothra. So, and that's the movie where Godzilla becomes a good guy. Mothra convinces Rodan and Godzilla to become good guys, and that was after Mothra and Rodan and Mothra each had their own movies. My son is here sitting on top of the car playing with Godzilla. So it's apropos that we're talking about Godzilla today. The next one was Monster Zero, also called Invasion of the Astro Monsters. That one had Ghidorah and Rodan and Godzilla, no Mothra. I'm home already. Been talking for a half hour about Godzilla. Let's move on now. Have a good Shabbos. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. I'm going to get yelled at for coming home late. Hello.
Blah, blah, blah.